Alright, so I want you to have out these two papers. We will be going through several of these papers, but you need to have the one that says Understanding the LEQ Rubric. It's one you picked up today. And then this one is from last class. It says Understanding the LEQ Rubric. Now again, how much we get done is really dependent on your guys' talking level and work ethic. I don't want to have to run out of time, okay? So, if there was ever a day that you guys were going to be really on task and paying attention, today is the day. Sound good? Yeah. All right, great. So, what we're going to be doing is, do you guys remember what our essay is about? What's our essay about? Causes and consequences. Causes and consequences. And again, if you're having outside conversations right now, kind of bring it in. Okay? Our essay is about the causes and the consequences of the American Revolution. Now, as we go through this essay, we're going to go piece by piece by piece. And if you have any questions, just switch hats. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I am here to help you. Okay? So if you want to say, how do I do this? Or how is this different? Let me know. One other thing that I want to point out is many of you, although this class has way more 10th graders than 11th graders, many of you guys may have come from another history class or AP World, AP Euro. If they taught this differently, then that's okay. If that works better for you, then awesome. Some people like their way and they love the way that they taught it. Some people find this way easier. It's whatever works for you. So if I say something and you say, well, Mr. Watts said this or Mr. Cater said this, if it works for you and achieves the rubric, then that is perfectly fine. Does that make sense? So don't panic thinking I'm going to hate you because you're using what Mr. Watts or Cater told you. Okay? Everybody understand? All right. So the first thing that we are going to do is historical context. Now, on this paper, we're not going to do the real life examples today because we're not going to have time because a lot of students want to work on it over the weekend. But on this Understanding the LEQ Rubric, on the left-hand side of contextualization, I'm going to give you the definition for this contextualization. Okay, so here's what I want you to write down where it says your definition. Your definition for contextualization, and it's kind of long. You're going to write an event / vocab term that happened before the time period of my essay that caused my essay topic. So again, an event / vocab term that happened before the time period of my essay that caused my essay topic. Okay? Now, what does this mean? When we think about events, there aren't all of a sudden events in American history that just happen, right? Something has to happen before to help cause the now. So, for example, let's do airport security. TSA, really strict security guidelines. What event happened before that caused our present day high security guidelines at TSA? 9/11, right? We can't just say all of a sudden one day they put a bunch of scanners in, right? Something has to happen before that causes the now. Let's think about World War II, because in theory, fingers crossed, you should at least know one event that caused World War II. But what was an event that happened one day in American history that caused us to enter into the war before the war occurred? What was that event in American history? Pearl Harbor, right? We can't all of a sudden say, oh, by the way, we're going to go at war. People want to say, well, why did you go at war, right? There has to be an event that happened before that caused the now. That is what we're focusing on in this essay, at least in this first part. So, what I want you to think of, and in theory we should all think of the same word, and I'll go 1, 2, 3, and we'll say it out loud. There is one major event that happened prior to 1763 that directly caused the American Revolution? 1, 2, 3, what is it?
French and Indian War.
French and Indian War, otherwise known as the 7 Years' War. Okay? Hey guys, I'm waiting. So that is what we're going to be focusing on today. Now, on this paper, I made this paper yesterday, so I'm hoping it's good. I've never used it before. Okay? So, with this paper, this is what your rubric looks like. Your LEQ is out of 6 points, so there's 6 different points you're trying to achieve. The second point says contextualization. It's on the bottom. It says historical context. There's an arrow attached to it. This is exactly what I just barely said. Your goal is to explain what happened before and how it caused the now. Now, if you will circle minimum of 3 sentences, okay? What you don't want to do is to say something like, September 11th happened prior to today and it caused TSA security. Or Pearl Harbor occurred and it caused the World War II. Did I really explain why it was important? No. Okay? So underneath this box, if you will do a little bullet star and put why it connects to the topic. And then underneath that, also make sure you write to define the event/term. And I'll explain why you have to do that in a second. Now, I have written for you several examples of each of the parts that we're going to go over today. I'm going to show you these in class. However, and here's your warning, I have uploaded every document from class today onto Canvas. Now, this could be a bad thing for some of you because of this. You might say, oh, Miss Ray already wrote a fifth of my essay for me. I can go ahead and copy it. Well, luckily, I have a student account on Turnitin, and I have already turned in my essay for grading, which means that if you copy my essay that's on Canvas, it'll show up that you plagiarized me, okay? So what that means is as we go through this, do not plagiarize me. Do your own thing, okay? So let me show you the example that I created for historical context. So, as you can see with historical context, at the beginning, I put prior to 1763. One of the really important things that you need to do with historical context is you need to make sure you tell me prior to, or before, or preceding this time period. They have to know that you understand that it was not between 1863 and 1783. You might want to put on your rubric next to all those other bullets, like do quotation marks and say prior to blank or preceding blank. However it works best for you. I do know that somebody said that in Mr. Watt's class, you learned something along the lines of happening at this time was the end of the French and Indian War, and then you go back and you talk about the French and Indian War. If that works for you, then great. If not, this is another way to be able to do it, okay? Now, if you notice, I define it first. The French and Indian War became a worldwide conflict that involved France, Great Britain, and several Native American tribes. I've just defined it, right? Because they have to know you actually know what this war means. Now goes into the important part, which is saying why it is the context. Why it's important to the now. So, when the war ended, Britain believed that American colonists should have to pay back the national debt. This increased taxes, which caused frustrations in the American colonies. The tension eventually led to the Revolutionary War. Do you see how I transitioned and talk about why that's important? That's your guys' goal. Okay? So here's what we're going to do. You guys are going to see if you can write some historical context. So, on your computers, you should now have a box. Some people, it works better to write directly into the box. Some people do it in Google Docs and copy it. It's whatever is best for you. Your goal is to write for me historical context for this essay. So remember, French and Indian War. Make sure you say it's prior to the period we're talking about. Tell me what it is and why it's important. Okay? You'll have about 5 minutes to do this. Ready, go. Refresh it. Yeah. Then try a different computer. Wait, did everybody just lose internet?
Yeah, I haven't had internet.
Try a new web page and see if you just lost the internet. Yeah, we did. Okay, grab out a piece of paper and write down your historical context.
That's you. I'll pull out a paper. Someone else can.
Grab out a piece of paper and see if you can write your historical context. We'll see if the internet comes back up. No, you can do one as a group. Okay, well right now focus on this, then we can wait for the internet to come back up.
That's what I told him. Write it. Okay. So what is it? So you guys just tell me exactly what to say and I'll write it.
No, you can have input too.
Okay.
Go on, Sam.
By the way, be careful if you're typing it. Make sure that you have internet access. Yeah. I won't save it. Okay.
Wait, we're not allowed, after we do this, we're allowed to use it, right?
Hey, what is this?
I'm trying to switch it to guest.
Yeah, don't do that, because we can't use guests on these computers.
I couldn't connect to the internet.
Try to... Because some of the computers are working. Their computer's working. Their computer's working.
Was.
What doesn't be
Was. No.
Pause.
Because like 3/4 of the students are working. You're one of only 3 groups that's not working on it.
I'm special.
Just keep working. Is there a way I can get you to like scooch that way 6 inches? So I can be able to scooch through this way? Again, please make sure that you're actually connected to the internet. If your computer says it's connected, it may not be, and I don't want you to lose all your work.
Yeah, the war. Now we need to describe the war. War. Between.
There you go. Yes, put an N on between.
Oh my gosh. Which countries? There you go.
You knew, why didn't you write it?
Huh? I don't know, I only 4 groups to look in there.
Yeah, that's
Take about 2.5 minutes.
what we were doing. The debt acquired by the English in this way.
One sec.
No, because after the
You need to like submit it or
Nope,
anything?
it automatically submits. Make sure it's in there if you can. I'm not sure, half the class has access and half doesn't, so I don't know what's going on.
So when you're writing, do you want to say it caused? Do you want to say it caused the American Revolution?
You
Do
can,
you want to say like that at the start or the beginning?
at the end.
At the end or the?
Because right now you're defining it and then you're connecting it to the American Revolution.
So you have to explain it, then say that it caused the revolution. Or say that it caused.
You need to clarify because you have right here, it was a conflict between France and Britain over land in the Ohio River Valley. This caused tensions between the American colonists and Britain. Well, according to the way that you've written it, the war never ended. Because the way that you have written is it caused heavy tensions between the colonists and the British during the war. So you need to talk about as the war ended, taxation began to increase, which caused tensions, or land restrictions began to increase, which caused tensions. Something to clarify. 1 minute. Make sure it's in if you can. Make sure it's on Pear Deck.
It's not changing continuity over time. Yeah.
All right. Also, if you're one of my people that is staring at their cell phone right now, let's remember that this is a really important day and not the day to be at your cell phone. Thanks. Okay. All right. Guys, I'm speaking. Okay. Now, I don't know why, because right now we have 11 groups. 7 of them work, 4 don't. I don't really know why, and I can't really explain why. So, I can't wait till you guys are ready. So, what we'll do is we'll do our best to be able to show you what we have, and then go from there. Okay? So, I want to go through each of these ones that I kind of pointed out that either need some help or are perfect examples. So, we're going off of what you already submitted. Don't make me lock it. Okay. Again, I can wait till you guys are ready. Okay. So, prior to 1763, France, Britain, and several native tribes were lost in a colonial conflict known as the 7 Years' War. Britain eventually won the conflict. You need to tell me more about what the 7 Years' War was. As far as I know right now, it could be the same thing as World War II. Because I don't know what it is. So if you're at the colonial conflict, which technically is inaccurate, colonial conflict means that it's a conflict in the colonies. That's not true. Britain wanted the Ohio River Valley, so did France, and that's why they got in the war. So it's not a colonial conflict, it was an actual world war. So, change this wording, tell me what the 7 Years' War is, everything else is fine here. One thing about this next section that I want to point out. According to the rubric, this is considered a first draft essay, which means that you can't be counted off for spelling or poor grammar or whatever it could be. That's why when somebody in this class wrote about beaver pellets, I knew you were talking about pelts, and I allowed it. You ready? Okay, good. So, even though you're not getting that though, about 50% of your readers are going to be English professors and history professors. So when you don't start things, there you go, with a capital letter, that's what we're talking about. Originally it was a lowercase. So do your best to use proper grammar as we go along. Okay. This, as soon as I see short, I already get concerned. Okay? So, prior to 1763, the French-Indian War was the conflict between France and Britain over land. After the war, there was much tension between the colonists and Britain because the British raised taxes for the colonists to pay off for their accumulated war tax. And then you end. Okay? Well, why is this important? So you tell me they're angry, so what? Why isn't it just like all the other conflicts where people didn't go to war? So you need to expand upon this. This is really, really short. So expand your answer in order to be able to get the point. Again, on this one, it's the same way. You go into it saying King George wanted to keep the colonial growth under his control, so he issued the proclamation line. Well, what's the proclamation line? If you end this and you go into your thesis, they're going to say, I don't really know what they were saying. So you need to tell me, if you're going to throw this term in there, you better tell me why it would be causing all this stuff to happen. I'm trying to find a good one here. Okay, here's one. So notice how they treated it. So they didn't just truncate it, but they at least connected it. So the French-Indian War was a war between France, Britain, Native Americans, and the colonists over the control of the Ohio River Valley. This caused debt for England, which was paid off by taxing the colonists. The proclamation line in 1763 was also created, which created tension between Britain and its colonists. Now, even though they did not define the proclamation line, it's okay here because they are going to talk about it later on in their essay, or they at least said it created tension. These tensions spurred into conflicts which caused the Revolutionary War. This would get the point. Okay? So a lot of what I'm seeing is kind of a lot of short ones. This is also another good one, except war needs to be capitalized. This is a conflict. You already got that. This ended in 1763, which caused national debt for both Britain, and France. This debt led to increase the taxes on the colonists, which caused them to feel oppressed from the British. That led to an increase of tensions. Wait, you just said that again. Okay. Tensions between the colonists and the British, and that tension led to the American Revolution. Okay? It's a little bit more expansive there. I want you to really quickly read over yours. It seems like a lot of them are kind of short or truncated or not complete. Let's make sure that you have some sort of a transition sentence or conclusion that tells me how it connects to the Revolutionary War. So take a second and fix some of your responses.
Known as the French which was between the Native Americans, French, and the British over the Ohio River Valley. The you decide that an equals to level, meaning that the American colonists are forced to pay taxes and were not allowed to settle over the Appalachian Mountains due to the proclamation line. These two instances caused outrage and revolts by the colonists, leading up to the Revolutionary War.
That's good. We should change the lot of money to
Yeah.
that way we sound
A whole lot of money.
I last time I went.
Which one? But it cost them a lot of money. But at a cost.
At an economic cost.
I mean, economic necessity.
I mean, not necessarily. Maybe they lost their own life and they only lost like $10.
Okay, make sure that you copy and paste your historical context into your document so you can use it later on. So again, copy and paste that from Pear Deck and then put it into your Google Doc. What?
So I just want to make sure
That works fine. Just know that when you see you say helped ignite the flames of American Revolution, that is what I like to call word fluff. And what it usually happens is it's like flouncy wording to try to be able to put into your essay. Just be careful, because what tends to happen when people use that type of wording is they'll start to be the people who do say, as the colonists came across the sea with waves crashing against the boat, or whatever it could be. Just make sure you're not compensating for a lack of knowledge by using flouncy wording. So just be aware of that. That's a change that happens with English.
It's not working, so what's the code?
It's up there on the top right. All right. Okay. Listen. Again, your class is already 7 minutes behind all my other classes, which makes me fearful we will not finish today. So we have to hurry and move along, or else we're not going to have time to finish. Okay? Now, again, I need you to have out your LEQ, the one with the chart that we're writing those definitions into. Explaining the LEQ rubric, the one with the boxes. And it does appear some people whose internet was not working is now working, so I would suggest trying to log in if you have the ability to. So now we're going to cover the thesis. What you need to write into that box is this top line right here. That's what I want you to write into that box on your definition. So again, you should be writing that down into that box. Okay. All right, let me explain your thesis. Okay? Now, your thesis is extremely important. It defines the rest of your essay. Now, this is one way to be able to write it. If you have a way that you prefer, then that's fine as well. Okay? Now, your thesis should only be 1 or 2 sentences. On your little chart right here, this thingy, okay, where it says thesis, make sure you put above it 1 or 2 sentences. Again, 1 or 2 sentences. Some people do an entire paragraph. That's not what the rubric says. The rubric says you need to be specific when you are making your claims. Now, here's what these letters mean. X is your main argument. This is going to be the major argument that's going to be about the rest of your essay. According to our topic, evaluate the extent to which shifts in American political beliefs caused the American Revolution. We know that this is a causation essay of cause and effects. Which one are we going to focus on as our major argument? Causes or effects? Try it again. What's going to be our major one that we're going to talk about? Causes. I was saying it because I only had 5 people and I want to make sure you guys are presenting it and make sure you're participating, okay? So we're focusing on the causes for our main argument because that is what is specifically referenced in our essay prompt. Now, most of the time, this is going to be a restatement of our question. This is where you use language of the question. So, right here it says, although shifts in American political beliefs between 1763 and 83 caused the American Revolution to a great extent. I'm saying that there were political beliefs that shifted, and it caused the American Revolution to a great extent. Okay? Do you guys see how I'm making my argument here? Yes, no? It's basically restating your question. Then, you go into A, B, and C. A, B, and C are your evidence. How can we prove to you that there were shifts in political beliefs that caused the American Revolution? These are going to be 3 important things that you guys are going to use as your causes. On your chart that has all of your brainstorming, this one right here, what I want you to do is, as a group, I want you to pick your 3 most important causes. Now, some of these could also be summarized better as a theme. So, for example, if you have things like the tax or the T Act and the Stamp Act, why don't you just put the word taxation? Or if you have Paxton Boys, Appalachian Mountains, Proclamation Line, just put Proclamation Line. I want you to pick your 3 strongest causes that are going to support your statement. So go ahead and pick your 3 most important causes. Ready, go.
My backpack's just like a mess.
But like, if I want to talk about like Boston Tea Party and Paxton Boys, can I just say like rebellions
Yes.
and so forth?
You can use rebellions as an example of one of them. Yeah.
In this paragraph.
Okay, alright, coming back together.
You're welcome. I told you basically all of it.
Hey, listen. Again, we are getting more and more behind in this class. And if you want to get everything done, we have to hurry because we're going to run out. Okay, so I decided that my 3 are going to be the Proclamation Line of 1763, propaganda, and national debt. So if you notice, now my thesis is, although shifts in American political beliefs between 1763 and 1783 caused the American Revolution to a great extent, due to evidence. The Proclamation Line of 1763, the use of propaganda, and an increase in the national debt. I now have my claim, how I'm going to prove that claim, and now we have what is known as the counter argument, and this is really important. If you will pull out your rubric that looks like this. Make sure you're on the LEQ side. Okay, listen. So, At the bottom, you have this section called Analysis and Reasoning. Your Analysis and Reasoning section is worth 2 points. The first point is, can you argue your claim, your argument? That in this case is going to be your causes, because that is the major argument you're trying to claim. The second point, and this is very important, is what is known as the unicorn point, also known as complexity. But there's a reason we call it the unicorn point. Okay? The reason why is because this point is the hardest one to get. Last year, only less than 1% of all the students who did the test last year got this point. It is very, very hard to get. Now, if you notice on the right, there are several ways to earn this point. The easiest way to get it is that second bullet. It's saying both sides of the t-chart. Now, if you will cross off for me where it says explaining multiple causes, cross that off, and here's the reason why. While all the other options are available depending on which one you get, when you see multiple causes, you're going to say, wait a second, we're already doing multiple causes, so we get the point, right? You can't use this one on a causation essay. So people will use a bunch of causes and think they got it. So instead, we're doing both sides of our chart. So if we already did causes, what is the other side of our argument going to be? Effects. That is what is known as our counter argument. Now, there is one more way that some students have learned, and I'm just going to warn you about this because I know one teacher in particular emphasizes it. Synthesis. Okay? Synthesis was taken out of the rubric last year, and there's a reason why. Usually less than 20% or 10% of students ever received that point. It is a very, very hard point to get, and if you say, what's synthesis? Don't even worry about it for the rest of your life. Because it was extremely hard to get, and students never understood it really well. So you can technically use synthesis to get this point. However, I do caution you because it is a very hard point to get. So just be aware of that. Especially because synthesis relates this topic to another topic in history. It's very difficult to practice when you haven't learned another topic yet that relates to this point. Because in theory, you would have to relate to like a cause of World War II. Well, we haven't even talked about World War II yet. So just be aware of that. Okay? But now I need my counter argument. So on your T-chart, you need to pick out your 3 best effects of the Revolutionary War. Your 3 best effects of the Revolutionary War. Go ahead and pick them out. Three best effects of the Revolutionary War. Alright, listen. So, if you notice, the last part of my thesis is my effects. This is my counter argument. It resulted in the creation of the Articles of Confederation while also bringing changes to African American and women's rights. Those are my 3 points. Articles, African American, and women. Now, when you put this all together, this is what it looks like. Okay? Now, one thing that you'll notice is I provided a second one. What this person did, aka me, is made it 2 sentences. So the first one, the proclamation line of 1763, the use of propaganda and an increase in the national debt, shifted American political beliefs to a great extent between this time period, which caused the American Revolution. Period. The American Revolution also brought changes too, and then I do the next couple of ones, the 3 effects. Whatever works best for you. Make sure it's 2 or less sentences though, okay? So on Pear Deck, go ahead and try to make me a thesis statement. None of you look like Mr. Watts.
Are you eavesdropping?
I eavesdrop all the time on my students. That's how I'm so good at picking up swear words.
We can test that.
You can test all you want, it's still gonna happen. Woo, don't kick that. Somebody kick the robot. Okay, take about 30 seconds. It's only one sentence. IMPRESSMENT.
Just exactly how it sounds.
Make sure it's in Pear Deck.
Almost. Before we could type that.
Transfer it over, please. I have a couple of just say all.
What is that?
I'm assuming it's supposed to say although.
Oh, it's an AL. That's
Hi. You have a note? You've missed quite an extensive amount, so you're going to want to make sure to watch this. Okay. All right. Okay. All right, let's see what some people have done here. Okay, so as you can see, this person did a two-parter. Although shifts in American political beliefs in this time period caused the American Revolution due to the proclamation line of 1763, and I put increase in taxation and the Boston Massacre. This is actually an incomplete sentence because you can see it just stops. So you can either connect these two or rewrite it so it's not a truncated sentence. But then this resulted in the Treaty of Paris, ratification of the Articles, and the formation of a national identity. Okay, good. Little wonky English, but would get the score. Okay. Although American political beliefs shifted between 1763 to 1783, caused again, a little bit wonky English here, the American Revolution due to the proclamation line, taxation, and the use of propaganda, comma, it resulted in done, done, done. Okay, good. Again, a little bit wonky English, but that's okay. Okay, this is what you don't want to do. Okay? Shifts, in my assumption, well, technically they perioded it, so, okay. Okay, shifts in American political beliefs caused the American Revolution to a large extent. Now, hey, listen, you might think that this is funny, but this is actually what I see all the time, okay? I see this on a ton of essays as we go throughout the year. So just make sure you avoid this. That is not good. Seeing most other things, it looks like everybody would have gotten the point except that one. But we still love you. Okay? So transfer this over. Make sure that you have it all. And then we're going to get to the most important part.
No, you're not getting this.
Okay.
No.
It's poison.
Yeah, leave it. You don't get it.
All right. Again, we are running out of time. We got to hurry. Grab this one out again. Grab this one out again. Why don't you just give it to me, and then I'll keep it for a couple years, and then we can make sure that you don't do it. Seriously, thank you. Okay. All right, listen. Again, we are rapidly running out of time. Okay. Now, over on the right, remember this analysis point? Okay. So if you notice, and I would circle it on here, the first analysis point, just circle the word causes. You have to show me that you know what the causes of the American Revolution were. On the other side, complexity, that's our fun unicorn point, circle the effects. Okay? You need to make sure that you can tell me what the counter argument of your essay is. And now we're going to get to the real meat of the essay. How do you write the essay? Now these are going to be using your evidence points. Now here's what you're going to do. You need to pick one of your causes that you feel the strongest that you can explain. So with your group, pick one of them. Just say it out loud and pick it. All right. Okay, listen. Okay. So, in your first evidence part, now if you can see up here, this is how I introduced the first paragraph on the causes. I restated the argument I'm making, so basically the language of the question. I introduced the first cause, which was the proclamation line. However you want to introduce your paragraphs is up to you. This is how I did it, but this is just kind of giving you a little bit of an idea of how you would start. Some people will just automatically start and say, one cause of the American Revolution was blank. Whatever works good for you. We are now going to do the first evidence point, which is the define. On this rubric, underneath define, make sure, or evidence part 1, circle the word define. Okay? Now here's what's going to happen. You are going to have a term. Just like with before, with the Wretched Indian War, you need to tell me what your term is. Now you need to act like your reader is the dumbest person in the world who knows nothing about American history. You need to act like they are a small child that you need to explain everything. Don't assume that they know what the Stamp Act is. Don't assume that they know what the Paxton Boys is. Be specific. So for mine, I chose the proclamation line. Now, on your rubric again, if you will circle where it says 2 sentences, this is adequate enough. So, for example, it says, the proclamation line of 1763 was created by England to satisfy prior agreements to the Native Americans that had been made during the French and Indian War. It banned all settlement west of the Appalachian Mountains. Do you see how I adequately defined it? Now somebody's like, oh, okay, I know enough about the proclamation line to be able to continue on. Now this is one very important thing though. You need to make sure your definition is within the time period and is about this essay. Why I say this is because of this. You will get students who are going to take like taxation and they're going to say taxation is defined as a tax by the government to pay off things. This could include sales tax or property taxes. Does that really talk about the American Revolution at all? No. My favorite ones are the ones like death, because I always have somebody say that, for example, one of the major effects of the Civil War is massive death that killed the male population in America. Well, if that's your topic, well, and the reason I say that is because almost over half of the male population dies in the Civil War. So that's why. Yeah, sorry. But then what I'll see is death is defined as no longer living. Or killing is defined as shooting somebody in war. Is that really what my definition is? No. Okay? Or I'll get things like last year's one of their essays was increase in technology in the 1950s. And I'll see technology is inventions having to do with technology. Because they don't know. They're like, how do I define this for somebody? That's obviously not what we're talking about. Okay? So with your group, introduce your cause and define it for me. I gave you guys a new question. Let me make sure. Hold on. You might not have a new one up. Hold on.
There it goes.
Like weirdos. Oh, shade. Is that your guys's that I said was terrible?
Josh is failing.
I'm sorry. It was anonymous. I don't know who it was.
I would say these taxes, Jacobo, you own the document. It's yours.
You're just defining it. You're not telling me how it led to the cause. You are just defining it. Take one more minute. Somebody over here raise their hands. Are you working with them? Okay.
All the LEQ.
Be nice to each other.
Yeah.
I don't know, but shut up is a pretty harsh word. Yeah, it's up there with the F word, I'm pretty sure. So, got to be nice.
Why would I get played?
Please paste your response in. A lot of the responses I'm seeing are kind of short, so. All right, Kate. I see a couple of people haven't transferred theirs, but with time constraints, I'm going to go over a couple ones I've seen that has a few problems with it, okay? The top one, in general, is pretty good. There's just one thing that I would clarify on it. Now, one of the primary causes of the American Revolution was the taxation upon the colonists by British Parliament, who believed the colonists had to pay proper taxes in order to relieve the war debt. I would add here to relieve the war debt from the French and Indian War. That's now connected you to your historical context. Because when you say relieve the war debt, is that the American Revolution war debt? Is that World War II? Is that the Ottoman Empire? Like, what is it? I don't know. Okay? Everything else is good, just adjust that. Now, one thing that's really important on this one that I wanted to point out, and I want to read it to you. One cause in the shift of political views preceding the American Revolution was the spread of the ideas of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment taught people their basic rights and privileges should not be intruded upon. While these ideals started with thinkers and philosophers in Europe, the ideas from the Enlightenment spread to the Americas. I don't know how you did that, but cool. So, one thing about this, though, this reads like historical context. In fact, if you had done this as your contextualization, it would have been great. Now, I'm not saying you're not writing well, because it looks awesome. But you've actually done historical context here. So now with the rest, you have to make sure you tell me about how John Locke's ideas or natural rights of man specifically affected the colonists. So now what you'll need to do is expand it more and tell me about how it's in America, because right now the only connection is spread to the Americas. Okay? So, and you can do that in your next section too. It's not a huge deal. Now this one right here is a little, deleted. This one right here is a little bit short. So kind of expand upon this just a little bit more, because if you see, this is actually your topic sentence, and you define it right here. You need to define it more and expand your answer. One thing about these ones is you have to have some sort of a topic sentence that introduces your paragraph. Because all of a sudden you go, after the 7 Years' War, the British created the proclamation line. You have to tell me beforehand, one cause was the proclamation line or something along those lines, okay? All right. The last thing that you have to do now is you must now explain to me why your cause caused the American Revolution. So this is the why. Why is your thing important? Why is the Enlightenment important? Taxation, whatever it could possibly be. On your rubric, the evidence part 2, circle explains. Circle minimum of 3, or just circle 3. This is the part, because it's really answering your question, and that's like the most important part of the whole thing. Underneath, I would do like a little star bullet and write the word why. Why is this so important? So if you notice here, I do 2 things in this example. Number 1, do you notice how I use the language of the question right here? Okay? So this angered many colonists. American political beliefs shifted due to the proclamation line because. Write down on your rubric because. You need to tell me why. Don't just truncate it. What always happens is I have somebody put on there great definition, and they say, and the proclamation line caused the American Revolution. Well, why? Tell me. Pretend I don't know anything. So then I go, because American colonists lost their land and the new restrictions increased tensions towards the British government, a conflict that occurred due to this tension was the Paxton Boys. Do you guys see how I've now connected it to another term? Now I don't have to go into a full-on definition, but now I say, these were a group of settlers who were angry about this restriction and showed their anger by killing several Native Americans in retaliation. I could even add one more sentence that says, this showed the tension in America because of the proclamation line. So notice, I really well explain here why this is so important. So on yours, you could just continue to write what you've already have. I want you to now explain to me why yours was a cause in 3 sentences. Go.
Okay, so just this angry he's upset. It's very just add some couple words to just add some whole okay. And then these two
Yes.
So this is our. So we haven't started the first one. I mean the.
You just want to know if it's good or not?
Yeah. But because we kind of already explained it in that paragraph, we don't know how to explain it anymore in the second one. In the explanation paragraph.
I'll say that your last sentence is a repeat of your sentence before. Because you say, due to the 7 Years' War, the British had increased national debt. These taxes were put in place to pay off the national... Well, say, which led to the implementation of laws to tax, and these were placed to pay off the debt. You're just saying that twice. Now, what you need to do is instead, the British had increased national debt, which led to the implementation of laws to tax the colonists. The laws did not have any input from the colonists, which made colonists angry. As the taxation increased, such as the Stamp Act, the Tea Act, whatever, it led to conflicts over these taxation laws, such as the Boston Massacre and the Boston Tea Party. Does that make sense? So you should expand. Tell me about some of the acts. Tell me about some of the rebellions that happened because of those taxations. But your last sentence I would delete. because you're just repeating yourself. 2 minutes.
Which acts of rebellion subject.
I'm not even saying
If you want to, that's fine. You can do that, as long as you explain it well enough.
Yeah. Why didn't you tell me? I would have told
Kate, listen. Kate, due to time, I'm going to show you some exemplary examples as well as 2 that were not. Okay? So, we'll start with this one on taxation. Now, one thing is, I'm sure this group remembers to make sure to have some sort of a sentence introducing the idea of taxation. So I'm assuming that your definition was above and you deleted it. So I'm just going to assume your definition is up here. So this is actually leading into their explain. The taxation upon the colonists by Parliament, and this word right here means to anger or infuriate many colonists. This shifted political beliefs because colonists in America were losing large amounts of money without having direct representation on their behalf in Parliament. A conflict that arose from the taxation was the Boston Tea Party, in which members of an underground resistance group that opposed the tax. By the way, what is this underground resistance group called? Sons of Liberty. If you add that in, you're going to have readers all over you loving you. Okay? Threw $3 million worth of tea from the ships into the water of Boston Harbor to protest. This is an exemplary example as long as you have defined it before. As long as you have another half that you deleted, then you're fine. One more example. One cause in the shift of political views preceding the American Revolution was the spread of the ideals in the Enlightenment. So we've already talked about this person before. One example of the influence of these Enlightenment ideals is shown in Thomas Paine's Common Sense, in which Paine, which I'm assuming this is not supposed to be a period here, in which Paine argues that breaking ties with England would be in the colonists' best interests if they care about their freedoms. This pamphlet demonstrates how Enlightenment ideals shifted American political beliefs. The only thing that I would add is to say on there that as people began to read the pamphlet, they began to turn towards the American cause. So that's great. Some things that are not good, okay? Do you see how short this is? This tells you right away that this is a problem. So the accumulated debt after the French and Indian War was high, and King George wanted to have the colonists pay for it by creating taxes. These taxes were on stamps, sugar, tea, and other everyday items. This is maybe a definition. I probably wouldn't even give you that point. And it definitely doesn't tell me why invasion caused the American Revolution. Okay? 2 does not work. Don't just put the number 2. Okay? Alright, listen. Okay, this is the same exact one. They have an introductory sentence. A lot of the colonists got into debt from taxes that they didn't choose to pay. They felt they weren't represented in Parliament, which caused them to rebel. Way too short. This is supposed to be your definition and your explanation. Short, 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 not good. Okay? Now, before we end, listen closely. And I only have a few minutes, so you need to listen very, very closely to me. Okay? If you will pull out your sheet that you picked up today, it says option 1, and it says like LEQ setup. And again, we have to hurry, so please listen very closely. Okay, this is a basic way to set up your essay. Now, if you look here in the second box where it has evidence A, define and explain, and then evidence B, draw a line above evidence B. You have done everything prior to this point. Now, all you have to do now is repeat the same procedure. Another example of a cause was blank. Define and explain. Finally, the last example was define and explain. Then the second half, all you do is you switch it to effects. There were many effects of the revolution. One effect was, number 1, define and explain. Do you guys see how you're just repeating the process over and over again? One thing about the conclusion, your conclusion is just restating the thesis. You don't have to do anything else for a conclusion, just restate your thesis. Now, one thing that I do not want you to do, and I have to hurry really quickly, is this. Now, this student forgot to do her essay. As she was walking to class, she found an essay on her iPad. Using Siri, she spoke into it and copied that, which is why you can say things like, due to immigration because of job opportunities, my grams in real life. Or rainness in a vacation. Or political differences of the market revolution. Okay? Now, you can also tell this because at the bottom, all are small, poorly made shops or apartments that work moment difference in the type of beep. Because what happened is she accidentally ran into somebody and she swore at them. And it got put into her essay. Now, don't do this. Take time to write your essay. Don't plagiarize except for the part you've made together. Okay? You do not have to move any of your desks back. Put the computers away. Don't forget. Oh, by the way, if you work on this over the weekend and you bring it to me on Monday or Tuesday, you say, hey, can you look over something for me? I don't mind doing that either. Or if you're still having an issue with part of this, come chat with me, okay?
So you did one lesson.
Yes. Let me grab something for Pablo really quick. No. Don't need to put your desk back because I need it for my U.S. History course.